and welcome to this week's Hi-Fi review. And we really do have a Hi-Fi review for you this time around, because last week we had a record store day report and we had 16 releases featured in that video. And if you missed that and you'd like to have a little looky, click up above and that will reveal all. For now, as I say, we have a piece of hi-fi, and it is from a company called Como, C-O-M-O. This is a sort of all-in-one, a luggable, I wouldn't say portable, it's too big to be a portable. It's sort of luggable all-in-one. Lots of features packed into a single chassis, that kind of thing. So you've got your speakers and your CD player, and you've got some digital stuff and streaming stuff. It's all in one box. It's called the Musica, and it's priced at £949. Now, if the Como Musica is priced at £949, then that puts a cheek-by-jowl competition with a couple of other all-in-ones I have reviewed on this channel not too long ago. Firstly was the Technics Audiophile F at, I think it was $799, and also the more expensive Ruark R5, which is priced at about $1,099. So the Como Musica is somewhere in the middle of that in terms of pure price. Since I reviewed both the Ruark R5 and the Technics Audiophile F all-in-one units, I've been using them occasionally to listen to music away from my central listening room. In my office, mostly, where my desktop computer resides, where I do most of my written work and video editing and the like. Now, despite the fact that they are brimming with features, and even though both sound very nice indeed, there is an issue with both of these units, and it's this. They demand a relatively high amount of real estate. They occupy some acreage. The R5 is 142 by 520 by 300 millimeters, which means it's pretty darn long. The Audiophile F is 450 by 143 by 280 millimeters, so it's not as long, but it has that depth. So the Audiophile might be a touch neater in length compared to the R5, but as I say, it does push out in terms of depth terms. So the question is this, therefore: do you also need to commit to such a relatively large footprint for what, after all, is a lifestyle all-in-one unit, something you can put in an office, or maybe a kitchen, or small bedroom, or maybe a garage, something where you're mooching around and you're not sitting in front of it, just there as a music source? Do you need that relatively large footprint? Because both of these products, I have to say, can be physically imposing on a relative level. So another question then: can you reduce the size of the chassis and hence the parts within, but retain quality in terms of build, aesthetics, and most importantly, sound quality? Well, the Como Audio Musica is a possible alternative for those looking to pump out music in their office, bedroom, hobby room, garage, or kitchen. Now, as I say, this is an all-in-one, and it has plenty of features, which we'll get to in a moment. But at 405 millimeters by 149 by 166, it's much narrower than the R5 and nowhere near as deep as the Audiophile F. In short, the Musica will be easier to slot into a relatively restricted space, while its weight, which is half of that of the Audiophile, and even less than the 9.5 kilograms of the R5 at 4.2 kilograms, means that the Musica can be very easily repositioned if required. Now let's talk about the build and the finish, shall we, of the Audiophile F, because for a lifestyle luggable all-in-one, well, that's pretty important, I would say. Partly because these sort of all-in-ones are often bought by people who, well, people who are not really interested in hi-fi per se, that is separates, the sort of stuff I listen to, for example. A lot of people buy an all-in-one because it's quick and easy and dirty, isn't it? You splash out your cash, you get everything, it's all there, it's all connected, you just switch on and go. So aesthetics and design and build, relatively speaking, is pretty darn important. Now, the Musica is rather prosaic in its design finish. The Technics Audiophile F has a very nice and solid metallic, rather nicely sculpted chassis with molded slats on the front, while the Ruark, well, that uses very nice fabric covering on the front and rather obvious real wood veneers, and it's a bit of a feast in terms of quality to the eye. The Como Musica, on the other hand, is obviously based on MDF and uses a rather basic veneer. It has rather sharp edges and quite a minimalist, comparatively stark appearance. The Como Musica's finish is tidy, it's clean, it's neat, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it in itself, but it doesn't really impress in the same way as the Technics impresses or the Ruark impresses. Now, the Musica arrives with a remote control, as do the other units I've just mentioned. The Technics offers a sort of full-size, very TV-like, AV-sized, whopping great big remote control, very familiar if you're sitting in front of a television, that kind of bulk and weight. The R5 provides a, I would say, delightfully fun and unique flying saucer-shaped remote that adds to the entire design ethos and matches the built-in interface on the R5's chassis. The Musica gives you a rather small, plastic, flimsy-looking remote. Again, there's nothing wrong with this remote in and of itself. It offers you the functions you need and it does the job. Even so, if aesthetics are critical to you and you need the looks as well as the sounds, then consider the Musica carefully and ask yourself if the Musica's rather conservative, simplified presentation is for you. Now, let's get to the nitty-gritty. Let's get personal with the Como Musica, and let's have a closer look. So what features does this all-in-one offer? Well, this is a 30-watt unit powered, not surprisingly you might say, by a Class D amplifier. To the left and right are built-in speakers consisting of a 19mm, that's about a 3/4 inch soft dome tweeter, and a 76mm, that's about 3-inch paper-coned mid-bass unit. Now, I was happy to hear this because I've heard some cheap and nasty portable units which tend to feature those metal-based speakers which can sound very bright and edgy, more so because of the portable configuration where everything is cheek by jowl. The more forgiving materials used here in the Como, well, that did promise a better sonic output. Now, if we're looking at the front of the chassis, the center is where the action is, and that is dominated by a full-color center output screen. I think it's a TFT. At the bottom of that are 3 knobs. Far left is a power volume knob, in the center a menu select knob, and to the right of that is a source back knob. On each side of the screen, left and right, are 2 rows of buttons that offer twin functions. They do double duty, you might say. Top left is an eject button for the slot-mounted CD player, and that runs along the very top. Moving down, you'll find similar CD function controls: play, pause, track back, and shuffle. The 4 buttons on the right consist of info for CDs that offer that information. Then you'll find stop, next track, and repeat, all CD functions. Now, these same 8 buttons can also be used to save favorite radio stations. As you can see, the front fascia is busy, but the button knob arrangement is pretty well organized and easy to navigate. The only issue I had with these, particularly the radio presets, is that they couldn't be labeled, so your memory is the only recourse here if you want to actually remember what radio station goes where, or failing that, a post-it note stuck to the side of the chassis. Now, when you first switch on, you're invited to run through a setup wizard, which will connect you to your local network, look out for software upgrades, and set the date time. The one real irritation was actually one of the Musica's main features, which is the color picture interface, I should say, which is full of feature icons. It's full of source icons. That is, you select one of these icons to go to the source. So you would select the Bluetooth icon to go to Bluetooth mode. You would select the CD icon to go into CD mode, and so on. That front screen is full of these icons, full of source select buttons. My problem with this was how they are selected. So when using the Musica's interface knob and buttons, the problem I have with this interface is that you run the highlighted cursor from left to right along the top line, and then you move down to the second line and you move from left to right. Then you move down to the third line, and again you move from left to right. You are unable to take shortcuts here. You have to move from left to right, or from right to left, but you have to move horizontally, as it were, along these buttons. You can't move up and down. You can't randomly navigate to focus on the one button you're after. So if your required button source is in the middle of line 2, for example, you have to run horizontally all the way across line 1, and then you can go down onto line 2, and then you have to move all the way across to the middle to the button you want. You can't move directly there. There are no shortcuts. This can be teeth grating, more so if you're in a hurry. Then you risk overrunning because the source knob software combination is not firmly locked together. So then you may have to scroll back again because you may have overrun your required button. Now, this rather attractive but in action rather clunky interface was present on Como products over 5 years ago, and it was clunky even then, and nothing has changed, it appears. Now, there is a solution to this, and it's with the included app, which you can download via iOS and Android. Here, sources including internet services can be accessed directly, quickly, and efficiently. What I did find odd about this app was that it not only controlled the Como Musica, it also controlled the Ruark R5, which I found intriguing. The Musica also features a couple of alarms and a sleep timer function. Streaming is possible via Bluetooth, while the built-in CD player can handle burned discs as well as the usual silver pressed offerings. But enough of the front, what of the back? Well, let's spin this around, and on the rear you can see a power socket, and there's a port for a separate radio aerial plus a base port. Below center is a line of connectivity ports, and let's start from the left, shall we? You will see a DC connector for an external power supply, not supplied in the box I might add, a 3.5mm headphone port, line out, 2 auxiliary ports, optical, USB for a thumb drive of music files. You also get Ethernet and a service port. Finally, I thought it rather amusing that Como refused to accept any responsibility for any possible errors or omissions in the manual, and unusually actually went to the trouble of naming poor old Peter Sciarra. I hope that's right, Peter. My apologies if I've pronounced your name incorrectly. Anyway, poor old Peter Sciarra is the sap who wrote the manual, and I describe him as a sap because Como have basically fingered the poor guy. According to Como, any pitchforks and flaming torches should be directed at Peter instead of the company. So, let us leave Mr. Sciarra on the run and fearing retribution from the shadows of every dark alley and through the hollow eyes of every passing stranger, and consider just how does this box sound? Well, let's go to the sound quality tests and we will find out. And welcome to the sound quality tests for the Como Musica all-in-one system. Now, I grabbed a CD. It was a copy of Design's reissued anniversary self-titled 1971 album on the Vacancy label, and I had a listen. This CD presents sunshine pop. It's cloaked in complex vocal harmonies, full of organic instruments, and it's quite a sonic challenge. Now, I began with CD, but I also looked at some built-in EQs. I did this because I wanted to find the right sound configuration for the Musica, because like many luggable all-in-ones, this design features a suite of EQ options and tone controls. Now, normally I would reject any EQ section and I would head straight for the flat or unaltered sonic delivery. Why? Well, as far as I'm concerned, if a company spends thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of pounds on a product, if they can't get it right out of the box, then why am I buying it in the first place? Why do I have to tweak the tone and tweak the EQ? It should sound great out of the box. As I say, I'm spending enough. Even so, EQs are weird for luggables. They are weird for those luggable all-in-ones because, well, as I said to you before, all the electronics and the speakers and the amp and everything else is stuffed into one chassis. So it can cause vibrations, it can cause high-frequency noise. A lot of this can transfer from one element, from one component to another, and it's tough for an all-in-one luggable to sound great. It's a bit of a challenge. So sometimes in this one case, well, EQs sometimes can help. Now, I controlled the EQ options directly from the app, and listening to the music in what Como called flat mode, which is their speak for unaltered, untouched, no EQs switched on mode, I noticed the bass emphasis, which was, well, it was a surprise for such a diminutive product like this. Upper mids and treble were good, although dynamic extension wasn't really present here. That could have been better. If anything, treble and upper mids were, well, rolled off, I suppose. They were also a little tense, a little edgy. So I reached for my first EQ, which was called TV Sound, and that provided a stretched, rather more expansive presentation, which removed a lot of the upper mid-range tension and broadened the soundstage a little bit. Now, I did try the tone controls, bass and treble, but they merely added emphasis, and not in a good way, rather in a detrimental way. They didn't remodel the sound at all, which was no real help. Similarly, there is a loudness option, which was pretty redundant because of the already default bass emphasis. Switching on loudness almost shook the chassis into kindling. So no, I returned to TV Sound, and that reined in the over-eager mid-range. It balanced the bass a touch, provided a bit more context for the treble, and, well, I stuck with that for the rest of this review. I actually thought the TV Sound option was more balanced and neutral than the flat option, which, again, I found a little odd. Now, the Musica doesn't have the mid-range insight of the Ruark or the lower frequency weight of the Technics Ottava F, or the soundstage complexity of both of those units. Nevertheless, within its own restricted sonic boundaries, the Musica offers a perfectly balanced and relatively open sound output, especially for its size, which you have to bear in mind. This is a much smaller unit than the Ruark and the Technics. This is a much more compact product. Now, the TV Sound EQ has a big say in that sonic presentation. It adds a rather cultured, slightly more sophisticated presentation that you just don't hear in the default flat mode. Okay, so that's the CD output, and that's the best EQ option. How about streaming? Well, for streaming, I switched to Amazon Music and Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, because, as I'm sure you know, we don't need no education, apparently. Well, you do if you have ambitions of writing a grammatically correct sentence, I would suggest. Sonically, I was impressed with the bass impact from this internet source. I also listened to AC/DC's Shoot to Thrill, and that had real momentum and tickled the ear with a rocking excitement. The Musica's bass emphasis gave rock a real leg up here, I would say. How about internet radio then? Turning to jazz and Al Jarreau now, and the track I'm Beginning to See the Light. The inherent lack of dynamic reach was helped here by the open and spacious soundstage generated by my favourite EQ, TV Sound, which positioned the mid-range sounds carefully to give a rather delicate and elegant presentation, relatively speaking, as long as the gain wasn't high, that is. Otherwise, the mids did begin to tense up a little. And now, Bluetooth. Now, for Bluetooth, I reached for Kylie Minogue, and I know that's an ambition of many others as well, and she sang All the Lovers over Bluetooth via my phone. And I was happy to hear that, well, this was a lossy file, and I was happy to say that this wasn't bright, it wasn't harsh, it wasn't edgy, as many lossy files do sound over Bluetooth. Sure, there were sonic restrictions, but as I say, this was a lossy file. Even so, there was still air around the mids in the soundstage, and detail was easily picked out by the ear. So there was still a level of sophistication in the music presentation as a whole. How about headphones? Now, I would have preferred to see a headphone socket in the front for easy access, rather than having to turn the whole unit around, and then you look within this gamut of sockets and you're saying which one is for headphones, and you're looking and looking. That can be slightly irritating. It's a one shot. Once you found it and everything's fine. But you know what I mean? It's just slightly irritating. Anyway, I popped a pair of Sennheiser HD 660Ss into the rear of the Como Musica chassis, and I listened to the CD again from design. Now, the sound was generally good. The treble output was a little bit clinical during crescendos, but apart from that, the mids offered plenty of detail, while bass was pretty solid and quite meaty. In fact, overall, if you like music with bass emphasis, if you love your bass, then you will love the Como Musica. So, how do I conclude this review of the Como Musica sound system, this all-in-one? Well, the most important conclusion I found during this entire review was this: the Como Musica is overpriced. Now, there is plenty to like here, and there are many features on offer, but the Musica is not worth the asking price. The price needs to be reduced, ideally by hundreds of pounds. Now, that's an important point, and it's a point I've just made. So let's put that to one side now, and we'll look at the rest. When positioned around my house as a luggable music source, the Como Musica, it proved to be an efficient and effective sound source. In absolute terms, the sound was rather restricted in terms of just how far it could go and the amount of information it could give to the ear. But the fine detail is less important in a product like this. I wouldn't expect you to be rooted in front of the Musica, analysing the finer points of the soundstage, for example, with a sort of critic's hat on. The Musica is more, well, it's more for casual and mobile listening. That is, listening while mooching around a room, getting on with chores and tasks. In this way, the Musica offers everything you need. Lots of features and a decent, if not exactly sparkling, sound output. In short, the Como Musica remains a good option as a lifestyle sound source. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. And if I could ask you, if you haven't already done so, if you would cast your eyes below this video window, and if you could click on the like and what's the other one? Subscribe. That's the one, isn't it? Like and subscribe. I should know by now, shouldn't I? If you could click those, that would help the channel to move forward because, well, you know, YouTube and algorithms and all that gear. Now, also down below, you will find some live chapter headings so you can navigate around this video if you so wish. There are also other links down there for my social media platforms, including my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join. It's a very nice place. It's not full of anger or politics or nasty pictures or anything like that. I keep it nice. It's nice. It's calm, welcoming, everybody's helpful, and you're free to talk about whatever you want to talk about, in hi-fi and music terms, that is. Also, check out my website, which is full of goodies and stuff you won't see on this channel. And as one example, last week I posted, I think it was Friday, how many? 13 book reviews. I was on a book kick and I posted 13 book reviews. So check out my site if you want to have a look at those. There's also lots of other goodies you don't see over here. There's stuff on there that doesn't really go in video form. There's stuff on there that doesn't really fit in video form. Some of the long form pieces, the language I use, the arrangement of paragraphs, all that writery, scribbly stuff doesn't really go in a video presentation. So check it out. Anyway, also my Patreon page, it's essential, folks. I'm sorry to say this, but it's essential. I earn pennies on YouTube. I get income from this video. This video will be great for about 20 quid for about a week, and then it'll die a death, and I'll get pennies after that, and that's the end of that. Nobody watches, well, few people, I shouldn't say no one. Few people watch older videos. All the traffic is within the first week, and then everything falls off a cliff. So I tend to earn pennies. YouTube for me is more of a marketing exercise to get my work out into the public domain. I don't really earn much, and yet I spend every time I produce a video, and Patreon supports that. So without Patreon, you ain't getting these videos, guys. If you like this video, please support me on Patreon. What more can I say? Apart from that, I'll tell you what else I can say is I'll be back on Tuesday because it's Tuneful Tuesday. Now, I've done some research and I've looked at other days and I'm quite expert. I am an expert in the musicality of the days of the week. And I would say Sunday is quite ambient. And I would say Wednesday, well, Wednesday, you know, Wednesday has a few vibes. But Tuesdays, they're completely tuneful, which is why I want you to be with me on Tuneful Tuesday, because that's the day where you will see, what will you see? Well, you will see probably a Masterworks, because I've done magazine type videos for a few weeks. So let's shake it up a bit and we'll do a Masterworks, who I ain't sure just yet. Check out the, hang on, my voice is going. Check, it's going, folks. I'm going to be in a second. So what am I doing with this finger? Yes, I'm pointing down below to the community tab. You can't really see it on the app, I've noticed, for YouTube. But if you're on a browser, then you'll see it down there. On the community tab, I will post little bits of snippets about forthcoming videos. I'll let slip about what I'm covering, plus other newsy bits. It's always worth checking down there, just in case. Anyway, I will see you, hopefully, on Tuneful Tuesdays. If not, hopefully the next weekend, where there'll be something hi-fi flavoured. Anyway, yes, I will see you then, whichever day you choose. Until that time, folks, bye-bye for now.